Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show. I got a great episode today where I talked to my friend Dayna Johnson about how you help patients understand their benefits and not take those benefits on as your own. One of the biggest challenges, actually two of the biggest challenges in any dental practice, is really understanding what happens at the front and utilizing your computer. That's pretty low. And then also understanding how to help patients understand what they owe if you participate or they participate in a PPO. And Dayna is just a fantastic trainer, and she does that with teams all over, trying to help them understand how to communicate that better and reposition our thinking into how we become more of an advocate. So hope you enjoy the episode, and we will see you soon.
Okay, perfect.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll just jump right into it. So Dayna, you've been a friend of ours for a long time, and I'm today we're going to be talking about just kind of like how patients can understand. You can help patients understand what they're involved in, especially if you're participating in a lot of PPOs, and how you don't have to own it yourself. And we're going to get into all those complexities. And I have so many questions. You've been a great friend of ours. But before we do that, one of my favorite things is always just letting people know who they're listening to. So I know who you are. A lot of people that have listened to the show know who you are, but tell everybody who Dayna Johnson is.
Gosh, boy, there's a big long story. I could tell my whole story, but I've been in dentistry my whole life. I kind of fell into dentistry like a lot of people. It wasn't really my path of choice, but I kind of fell into it, and I love this career. I mean, it has taken me from the dental. I used to install networks into dental practices, and then I started working in a dental practice, and then I became a software trainer, and now I'm a speaker, coach, consultant, writer, blogger, podcaster, and all these things. And I just think that the dental industry is just such an amazing career, and I love that I fell into it, and I've been able to meet amazing people like you, and I met my husband in dentistry. So
Yep.
I just love this career path that I've ended up on.
Yeah, and you're a great giver. Like, you always give us so much insight, and you're more than just a speaker. Like, you hold some special expertise. So, you're like a Dentrix expert. So I often default to you. I'll send you random emails like, Dayna, I don't know how to find this information. And you're like, Kirk, you can't. Oh, what do you? So I'm not the computer guy.
Yeah.
But I want to just talk about like the complexities of this. And before we hit the go button on this, one of our frustrations, this is an incredibly awesome profession, but my frustration and also yours is we spend a lot of time trying to help dentists understand what they're actually involved in. Can you explain more about that?
Well, yeah, if we're going kind of down that dental insurance PPO path, that we were kind of talking about earlier. I mean, there's a lot of things that dental teams have to deal with their, their patients, their practice management software, helping patients. I kind of think about the dental team as the advocate for the patient, right?
Yeah.
They're advocating on the patient's behalf for dental benefits, and they're advocating for their patients for preventative care. And, we're not just dentists, we're oral health physicians.
Right.
And, we're in the healthcare industry. And, it's up to our teams to advocate for our patients for good recommended healthcare, for oral healthcare, and getting that paid by the insurance companies. And so there's a lot that our dental teams are having to navigate their selves through. I mean, there are so many details and paths that each dental practice is so different. It's really helping them to be the best practice that they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And advocates, you'd think most people would go, "Oh, I totally understand that." But the truth of it is sometimes they're just so mired down in like so many phone calls, and they're like, "Well, we don't participate." And so they don't really get their brain or their heart in the right place. And I
Mm-hmm.
get it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, even if you are okay, so if you're in network, then there's this path of understanding what that patient's dental benefits are, and how do you maximize those benefits for them. If you're non-contracted, then it's kind of the same path, but the details are just a little bit different. And what I really help my teams do is to help the patient understand what that out of pocket is.
yeah,
I always tell my teams, like if they're not contracted, how do we? I always hear them say, "Well, we're not contracted with that plan," and it's like patients really don't care whether you're contracted or not. They just want to know what their out of pocket is.
right.
What's my out of pocket? And almost a lot of times patients don't even care if it's covered or not covered. Just explain to me what my out of pocket is, and how I can afford to pay for it, because you're recommending it to me and I know I want it because I trust my doctor. Now how can you help me afford it and pay for it? and
Right.
and that's what I want our offices to do, is to really help advocate for their patient as far as understanding what their benefits are. If something's not covered or if something has some kind of a limitation on it, then how can our teams give that information to our patients without owning those insurance benefits, because those do belong to the patient.
Yeah. Now, is it true you hear this all the time? Like sometimes patients just don't know what to ask. And so they're just asking all these like questions, and sometimes they don't even know why they're saying it. So as a team member, you have to start with kind of that, right?
Yeah, definitely start with the basics. Sometimes you have to spell things out in crayon for people, and so, I think just starting with the basics really kind of, whenever I'm working with a team and we're presenting recommended treatment, and they're discussing it with the patient, it's easy to try and give the patient too many details, too much information,
Right.
and then that just confuses people. I always try and help my teams to start with the basics. Let them know what their out of pocket is. Okay.
Hmm.
So if we're presenting a crown and a buildup, and we know the buildup's not covered, just give them the total. The total's $2,000. Your out of pocket is going to be 500, and then your expected your out of pocket is going to be 1,500. And then if the patient says, "Well, why is my out of pocket so high?" Then we can start adding layers of details.
Yeah.
Because I think we really want to try and keep it simple. I always try and present things in a very simple way. That way, it sometimes will eliminate a lot of those questions that we don't really need to get into if we don't have to. If patients are okay with a $1,500 out of pocket, then we just talk about, okay, well, what are our options to pay for it? Um, Now, if they start to ask, well, why is my out of pocket so high? Then we can add on a layer of, well, your insurance company, they don't cover this particular service. And then we can start going into different layers of details as patients ask questions.
Yeah, and you and I are on the same page. Like you don't go around the country telling everybody, "Oh, you got to get off of PPOs," and making them
Mhm.
angry about them. There's a place for everybody in the marketplace. And you just have to be honest about what your expectations are going into that, because a lot of people, they don't know what they're getting involved with, and then they get angry. And like you said, they can't find their agreements and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and that's kind of tough. I do have a specific question though on the front desk. This is something that I hear a lot, is that when you're looking at hiring, which is harder than ever, people
Hmm.
always say the insurance game is really hard for a new dental team member that's never dealt with this before. Would you agree, like in figuring out what the patient owes, is that harder now than ever? And what would you say about that game?
It is harder than ever.
Why? Why
Oh
though?
my gosh. Okay, so I can only work, my experience working with teams and myself working in a dental practice. When I was in my own dental practice, It used to be insurance covered 180, 50 percentages. They had, you had a maximum, you had a deductible, and there weren't all these limitations and frequencies and exceptions. I mean, nowadays insurance companies are downgrading crowns, and they're downgrading from a, porcelain crown to a PFM. And a new team member that comes in, they don't know the difference between a porcelain crown and a PFM.
Right.
They just don't know the difference. And, they don't know the difference between a bicuspid and a molar, or, an incisal and a buccal. So a lot of times these new team members that are coming in, they don't have the dental terminology, for one thing. And then for the insurance company to say, well, we downgrade crowns to a PFM, they're like, what the heck is a PFM? And so I do believe it is more challenging now, because insurance companies are, and it's not necessarily the insurance company's fault. A lot of times it's the employers that are requesting these types of plans because they want to cut their overhead expenses for, employee benefits. And so they're wanting to cut things out of the insurance plan. So then the employers are negotiating these different, wacky plans with the insurance companies. So I do feel, I was working with the team just a couple days ago, and I love the insurance eligibility, the insurance breakdown that the Dentrix insurance eligibility offers. It's really detailed. And, there was like procedure code after procedure code with, what does that procedure code cover? It's not covered in the 180, 50 anymore. It's like, this procedure code is covered at this, with this dollar amount, and it has a frequency limitation of 24 months. And then this procedure code. So, not only is it percentages now that we have to deal with, but it's individual codes, and this code has a waiting period of 2 years. So it's definitely more challenging because there's so many details.
Yeah. So I'm going to play the dentist who's like, Dayna, you're talking to my office right now. Like, okay, and I don't want to make this any more complex than it is, but
Right.
we're going to add another layer to this because you are a Dentrix expert. Like, one of the challenges we have is utilization of Dentrix to begin with.
Yeah.
So people always complain, but when we go out there, we're working in an office, one of our coaches, they're like, gosh, they're not even using the basic functionality of this. So now you've got that piece in place. So Dayna, I'm going to be a dentist who's like, okay, so where do we start? Like, where would you start with somebody like me who's like, okay, my team only uses it 25%. I've got new people up front that don't understand this. Where do we go from there?
Yeah. I think a lot of it, for people that really don't have the details yet readily available, I think first it has to start with the verbal skills. And, you may agree that we first have to let our new team members know that this isn't like, we don't have guarantees in the dental industry. We don't have any kind of guarantees that the insurance company is going to cover this. So I think the first thing we have to really teach our new team members are these verbal skills that, this is your out of pocket. We're estimating your out of pocket is going to be about $1,500. And I think also letting our new team members know that the patient is ultimately accountable for the full balance.
Yeah.
And, this is what we're anticipating your insurance company is going to cover. And what I've also been doing a lot of times is printing all the details and handing it to the patient. And, I was working with a team the other day, and I said, I would print a copy of this for the patient, so that the patient understands this is what we're working off of with your insurance company. Now, if there's something on here that comes back and it's not on this sheet, then there's no way we could have known that it was not covered. So I do like to try and get my teams to give the patient exactly what we're working off of.
Right.
So it also helps teach the patient what the details are with their plan, because that's usually the hardest part is patients don't know what their plan covers.
Yeah.
And then so I think first is verbal skills, of course, with our new team members that maybe don't have a dental background, and then bringing the patient involved a little bit more, because if we're checking the eligibility or we're checking the benefits, because we are a PPO and we do want to help our patients understand their benefits, then have 2 copies, give one to the patient and say, this is what I'm working off of. So my estimate is kind of coming from this sheet that I get from your insurance. And then also keeping an extra copy like in the document center, so that if the insurance company comes back and doesn't pay on something, at least we can try and hold the insurance company accountable as well.
Yeah, and so you and the patient are going to be working together. I think that's absolutely
Yeah.
brilliant. And that now go one. I just love this stuff. I could talk to you all day about. You had mentioned like you don't want to take on their insurances as your own. You want to help the patient. So explain because that's kind of a fine line. Like you want to be the advocate, but you also don't want to take on their insurance as a responsibility. Can you explain why that's so important? Because I think it's brilliant what you said, but explain that. Would you mind?
Well, because, I think I work with some teams that they say, well, if we gave the patient an estimate and then the insurance company comes back and says, oh, there was a waiting period on that bone grafting, so we're going to now write it off. And I'm like, we really want to also advocate for our teams and our doctors that you don't own this insurance plan. This is not your plan. This plan belongs to the contract between the employer and the dental insurance company. And we're just the kind of the third party, taking care of the patient. And so if the insurance company denies something, the doctor doesn't have to own that. Why should he take the hit for that? If the employer and the insurance company have this contract with these, freaky waiting periods.
Yeah.
So insurance, the dental practice is already struggling with such a small margin that for the dental team to write off things that the insurance company is denying just makes that margin so much smaller. And, the doctor believes in the treatment that he's performing, and he deserves to get paid for it. And if the insurance company doesn't pay for it, then the patient pays for it. And so I think it's really important that patients understand what the total cost of the treatment is. So if the total treatment is $2,000 and they're estimated out of pocket, maybe the dental team says your estimated out of pocket is $500, but the insurance company denies something and now their out of pocket is $1,000, that the patient already understood that they would have to, cough up the difference. So,
Yeah.
And that all comes back to verbal skills, really.
Totally agree. Verbal skills matter because they create value. They help patients understand. And from the error side of things, and again, I don't want to freak anybody out, but you might be a dentist going, oh, we don't need to do that. Well, the error side of it costs a lot of money. There are so many errors made just in insurance explanations between patients and team members and patients. So it's critical everybody's on the same page. And again, back to what we said before, being a dentist is the greatest job ever. I'm very opinionated about that. And you can choose how you want to practice, but also understanding the nature of these games that are going to continue. The insurance companies, it's very complex, and they're not going to have a reckoning someday going, you know what? We've been thinking about this. It's been 40 years we've been really not nice to dentists. Like we're going to have a reconciliation. Let's start really giving back to these people. Would you agree? Like, I mean, I'm being a little facetious or a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If we haven't seen that yet,
Right.
that is really, unless every dentist, 200,000 of them in the country, unless they all, went on strike to the insurance companies and said, we're not going to be PPO with you unless you change your ways. And we know that's not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, up in the state of Washington, where I'm originally from, when I was still in the dental practice, I think it was 2008 when Delta Dental of Washington slashed the contracted fees by 15% across the board. Like just
Yep, I remember that. Yeah,
slash the fees. And, everybody complained a little bit, but really, there was really nothing that they did.
mm,
So, Delta Dental just keeps doing what they want to do, and because nobody stands up to them.
right.
So we just since there's really not much we can do unless we had a big organization really take on the insurance companies. It's up to us as the dental practice to help our patients understand what their plan limitations are, and that they are responsible for those limitations, those out-of-pocket expenses. And if they want better coverage, they need to advocate that with their employer or with their insurance commissioners, or their the anybody that lobbies, in Washington or
Right.
something. But
Right.
yeah,
No, I think you nailed it right there, because understanding the limitations of what you've signed up for as a patient is the key. And that's about all you can do in that respect without getting too upset. I have so many questions for you. What are some of the things that dental offices get wrong, like in processes? You're like, oh my gosh, don't do that. Like, what comes to top of mind on a process they get wrong? What should they be doing better?
yeah, okay, yeah. So probably one of the most common things I see is that, okay, so one of the processes in the software is that, and specifically in Dentrix, is that when you run the month end process, then it resets the patient's benefits used, and it resets it back to zero if that plan is going to renew.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're getting up to end of December. So a lot of plans are going to renew in January.
Right.
And so if the dental teams, there's also a lot of plans that renew in October, and there's a lot of plans that renew in July. And so if the dental team is not running the month end process, then it's not resetting the insurance benefits used back to zero.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the software is underestimating because it thinks that the patient is maxed out. And so then you're not getting an accurate estimate. So that's probably one of the most common things I see. I was just working with a practice yesterday, and they had not run their month end process since 2018.
Yeah.
And
Now this
and
is funny, but it's not funny because the receivables are like $7 million or whatever. Like, it's just
yeah.
crazy. So what?
And so that's probably like one of the biggest processes I see in the software that could fix so many problems.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's like computer 101. Is just, you got to just, every
Yeah,
month starts and ends, right? But why don't,
yeah,
because we do see that a lot too. Why is that
yeah.
why is that a fact? Do you know?
I think that it could be that maybe they just think it's running
Right.
and they don't check it, or a lot of office managers, they want to hold the books open because maybe I need to make changes to, the month. And I'm like, no, you don't.
No.
That is a security issue. And
Right.
so I think there's multiple reasons why offices don't run month end. And a lot of it has to do, they want to keep the ledger open so they can fix it. And I'm like, no, you really don't need to do that.
No.
And because that's a security issue, that's an accounting problem right there. And then so that's probably one of the biggest things I see is that. So I think number one, make sure that your system is up to date. Because that's kind of first off is you need to know how much does the patient have in a maximum left available. That, what is the annual benefit and how much do they still have left this year, and have they met their deductible?
Right.
Because because of what you said earlier. I mean, insurance companies haven't increased the maximum the annual benefit for over 40 years, but dental treatment has been rising year after year after year, and so most of the time when patients are doing, maybe a couple crowns and some fillings or some SRP or something, they're going to max out anyway.
Right.
And so it's really just we just really usually we just need to know what's their annual benefit, because they're probably going to max out anyway. But if the maximum benefit in the computer is wrong, then we're giving the patient an inaccurate estimate. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What's another thing that, I mean, I don't want to make it on all things that go wrong, but this is really, well, you know this, I love the learning part of this. And even when you talk, I'm like, I never thought about that. And now with the reason, I learned a couple of years back when we started doing a lot of these series, it's very important to close everything out because people can backdate. And I'm like, well, I don't know what backdating is, and so backdating is when you go back and fix procedures that happened 2 or 3 months ago, and you as a dentist would never know looking at the day sheet. Now, again, the whole idea is not to provoke any fear. It's just to really embrace best practices every single month. And one of them is just really learning how to use your computer, closing out a month, understanding verbal skills, being able to describe, understand advocacy, and then also being able to describe out of pocket. Can you... Let's talk about some of your best docs. Like, what do the best docs do understanding out of pocket? Because they're not limiting their treatment recommendations up to what the patients. What are your thoughts on that as you watch some of the best practices do that?
Yeah. And what I love about some practices that I work with and what they will do, and I really love this actually, where they will give, here's a total dollar amount for this treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to include both crowns, both buildups, and a filling on that tooth that you need. So the total treatment cost is, $10,000. And that includes all these procedures.
Yep.
They don't line item it out. It's just, this is that treatment for that upper right area. It's going to be $10,000. Your out of pocket is going to be $8,500. We can talk about financing. We can talk about maybe a couple payments. What are your thoughts? So I really have embraced these doctors and teams that are looking at it more of a, this is the total treatment that I'm recommending. The total fee is going to be, $10,000. It includes all of this.
Yeah.
And we don't line item it out,
right.
And I'm like, I've really started to embrace that. And, it really kind of eliminates all the details. And the patient knows, okay, I'm getting all of this done. I'm getting this whole upper right area done. And this is going to be my out of pocket. Now I'm probably exaggerating a little bit on the cost, but you get my point where you're not line iteming out every single procedure code. You're not giving them the codes. You're not giving them the insurance company will cover this and your portion is this, because then what patients are going to want to do is they're going to want to piecemeal it apart. Do I really need that buildup? So what it does is it eliminates all the negotiations really away from, patients trying to piecemeal it apart. So I've really embraced that.
Yeah, you're talking my language. And so this has been taught for a long time, actually. When I first got in the industry, there were dentists teaching this. And then you just have to watch dentists experiment with that because it is a little bit of a scary concept to present a larger field without itemization or larger fee without itemization. But it isn't very hard to understand if I was, somebody who redid kitchens or redid, landscaping, I certainly wouldn't come to you with a 17-page itemized list of all these things and how they all break down. My own landscaper, the guy I like. Now, let me say this, because Dayna, you're talking my language. It isn't the itemization or non-itemization that really sells dental treatment. It's the trust factor first and the authentic connection. So once you get to the point where you're discussing treatment, if I trust you, and I'm rebuilding your kitchen. And even if you do trust me and I give you a $75,000 treatment plan, like all of these items, new sink, you're going to go, I don't know if we need that kind of sink. Let's not do those kind of floors. So the brain's natural inclination is to start to trim the itemization. So I totally understand what you're saying. And I do see exactly what you're saying. So a lot of our practices, they have gotten into really just focusing on the patient, what the patient wants, what they need. and not limiting themselves to what the patient's benefits would cover, and then letting them know here's the rest of the details. And that's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think I've seen PPO practices do that and non-PPO practices do that.
Yeah.
And it has it's really kind of changed the conversation with the patient and the treatment coordinator and it goes from these line item conversations to a more health and wellness conversation or
Right.
you know and it's really interesting because a lot of times when I see teams that itemize it out and they have the total fee and the estimated insurance and then the patient portion, if the patient sees an estimated insurance with a zero, then they're gonna question it. They're gonna, why is my insurance company not covering that?
Mm-hmm.
And then now the team member has to answer that question. Now they've gone away from talking about treatment and the benefits of the treatment, and now they have to answer this question about why is my insurance company not covering that. So it kind of just changes the conversation a little bit, which I really like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the other thing, I spend a lot of time talking to kids. I love the kids and the dental students. So, and I love them, but you can see the look on their face. They're like, oh no. What would you say to a bunch of these kids coming out when they need to understand the environment they're getting into? Like, what are your words of wisdom to these? And you can see they're so brilliant and they're
Yeah.
so hungry and they're probably just like us, but I don't know, they probably had more hair back, better looking than me for sure. But like, what do you tell them? What are some of the pieces of advice that you give them about a great career in dentistry?
Well, I think that, they come out of dental school and they really haven't had the opportunity to sit side by side with maybe their front desk team member and
Mm-hmm.
to see all these details and all these complexities with insurance before. So I think that it would really be great for those dental students to sit side by side with, or maybe even pretend like they're the patient
Yeah.
and to really understand what their patients are going to be going through and those questions that their patients are going to be asking. And I think it would really help the students to develop their own verbal skills around insurance.
Yeah.
And then I think it would also really help them to identify, do I want to be a PPO practice or do I want to be a fee for service practice? And then, because the conversation is a little bit different, a PPO practice does have to have those more detailed conversations with patients about the insurance plans. Now, if they're fee for service, they still have to have the conversations, but it is just a little bit tweaked a little bit differently, And I think dental students, they just don't have that opportunity to sit toe to toe with the front office team members in school.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be good for them to continue being the student for a little while and come into the practice. And when they are onboarding with a new practice, maybe they're looking to be an associate with this practice. Um, Being the student still for a little while, even though they have their degree now, and sitting and observing what goes on at the front desk. What kinds of details do they go through with the patient? And then if they are thinking about, maybe starting their own practice, what would that look like? Do I want to have a practice where we have those really in-depth insurance conversations? Did that make me feel good? Did I like
Right.
that? And then I think that would give them a lot of good information if they can continue to be a student even when they get into a practice. And that would be my advice, is
Yeah.
to even continue being a student even when you walk in the door as an associate or a new practice owner.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you're talking my you always talk my language, but it's totally true. I mean, if you're a young dentist, I tell I spoke with kids at Chapel Hill just recently, and I'm like,
Yeah.
go out there and see what the world's. Don't just jump at the first opportunity. You might want to shadow a couple offices. And you know what's so cool about this industry is it's so noble and so nice that most people will say, "Come on in, check this out."
Yeah.
They're very willing to share in
I
that whole
agree.
process before you, and you're going to see things you like, things you don't like,
Yeah.
and it just sets you. The learning curve is faster that way, don't you think?
I agree. I mean, because the new student, the new dental student that's graduating from dental school is going to want to go shadow a doctor and
Yeah,
see, okay, what kind of technical skills does this doctor have, But I think shadow the front desk. I mean, be a fly on the wall and watch how they present treatment and watch how challenging it is for them to gather these insurance benefits.
yeah,
And because it is challenging. I watch my teams every day, and I love to help them with their workflow, but I also just am so empathetic about how challenging it is. And I do my best to help them with their software and to help them with those verbal skills. And I think a new grad coming in, shadow the front desk
yeah.
and see what they do every day, because that's also going to be a learning curve for them as a new doctor to, okay, what do I want my front desk to look like?
Right. That's great
Yeah.
advice. Great advice. I love it. So if you're a young dentist and you're listening, you better listen to what she's saying. And, you and I both, if any dentist called us, you could come up with a list of, go watch this doctor. She's
Oh,
awesome.
I was just going to say, reach out to me and, oh my gosh, just let me know where you are
Yeah.
graduating from, and I'll place you in a practice that would just love to have you come in and watch and see the reality of what happens at the front desk, because a lot of times the clinical team doesn't even know what the front desk is doing. And when I teach onboarding, when I'm onboarding a new front office team member, I want them to sit in the back
Yeah.
and see what happens in the back. And when I'm onboarding a new hygienist or a dental assistant, I want them to see what happens in the front, because
Totally.
I really want them to have this mutual respect for what their job descriptions are, because both have challenges.
Yeah.
And I never want them to go to head with each other.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Dana, this is awesome. Any last thoughts you have on being the advocate for the patient or helping them understand their benefits? Any last words of wisdom?
Well, I think, of course, I'm an educator by heart. I mean, I love, just like you, I love going into practices and just preaching from the rooftops about how they can make their workflow better. I see myself kind of as a workflow expert. How can we navigate the software better? I love to just sit back and watch teams navigate their software so that then I can help with their workflow,
Yeah.
because a lot of times they know how to use the software. They know the keystrokes, they know the clicks, they know where to go to do the billing and to write the clinical note. But do they really understand, or can they really create this seamless workflow on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Right.
And that's what I really find I love to do. Like, I love to observe dental teams and then say, hey, what if we think about this? Or what if we did it this way? And their eyes light up and they're like, oh my gosh, you just saved me hours in my day.
That's
And
awesome.
so that's just what really warms my heart, is being able to really help these teams kind of get out of their old ways and see things maybe a little bit differently. And I do that I do that all different ways, either in the office or with my online library. I have a library of courses. And so I really have tried to offer up different modalities for helping practices, whether it's in office or if it's remotely. Just those light bulb moments is really what I'm looking for every single day.
That's awesome. And you've got one of those courses. Can you just talk about one of the
Yeah.
courses? And if I'm
Yeah.
listening, where do I go to find out more
I have
about it?
a couple different courses available. If you go to My website's probably the best place to go, navoni.com. And I have a store page. And on the store page, I have lots of different courses. Or if you want all the courses, just join the membership. That's the most economical way to get the entire library of over 35 courses. And then, but if you want in office, then reach out to me directly. There's a way you could schedule a phone call. I have a phone call link on my website. Just schedule a quick phone call with me. We'll talk on the phone and see what the goals are for your practice. And I'm there. Even though I love, dentistry in general, I'm a Dentrix workflow expert. And so, definitely those are my peeps.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, thank you so much for being on, Dayna. I really appreciate it. We're going to put all the show notes down all the links down in the show notes. So if you're just listening on Spotify or Stitcher or iTunes, whatever, just swipe up to the notes. You'll see all the links that she had mentioned below, and make sure you check it out. And so, Dayna, thank you for being on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kirk. I love talking with you. It's just highlights my day.
Hey, sure. Well, oh my gosh. Well, we got to get you some better days than just talking to me. So, but no, I value our relationship. I love the fact that I can just send you an email and you help me understand what happens in some of these very complex situations with whether it be Dentrix or some of the softwares and how they all work. But make sure you guys check it out. So, Dayna, you enjoy the rest of your day, and hold on while we say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for watching or listening or whatever you're doing with the Best Practices Show. We are in version 2.0, and you're going to see we've got some incredible guests lined up in the next couple of weeks. And so I really love all the emails you guys send. If there's anybody you want me to interview or any subject matter, whether it be from other guests or Dayna, I'm going to have Dayna back and we'll ask her the good questions. Feel free to send them to us. But until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.